really, really, really quick. Very, very short. All right, so you need to basically install a processor on the motherboard. You come here to the processors. Here are all these chips. All right, looking at that motherboard, which one of these chips go in there? Didn't you read the book? Can't you tell by its color and its shape which socket it is? The answer is no. Where do I find out what the socket set is for this motherboard?
Details.
Huh?
Details.
Specification.
Yeah, click on the motherboard, I come down here to details, and I look at its specifications. So looking at that, what is the socket set of this motherboard?
Designed for an Intel i7 processor.
Okay, that's not the socket. You're looking for the socket.
LGA 1366.
There you go, right here, LG 1366. That's the key number you're looking for. Okay. Notice it even says motherboard socket 1366. So they gave us a clue here on this motherboard, the name of the motherboard, its socket. It is you can put different kinds of RAM in there, but the motherboard is designed for one processor and one processor only. So it's going to be right up in the front. So, which one of these processors here is a 1366?
i7-975.
Yep, the i7-975. It is the only one that says LGA 1366. Oh, I guess this one's up here. So, if we read the scenario, they want the fastest. So there's the i7-930 and the i7-975. Which one would cost more? Which one's faster?
The 975.
Why is the 975?
Because it's at 3.33.
More megabytes.
It's got both larger gigahertz, and it has more megabytes. It has 8 megabytes on it. But really, the speed is going to be the 3 gigahertz versus the 2 gigahertz. So you just drag the 3 gigahertz i975, drop it right there into the socket. And the socket is known as? What 3-letter acronym? Not CPU. CPU is what I have, but what is the socket's name?
LGA.
ZIF. And what does ZIF stand for? Zero insertion force. They're telling you, don't use a hammer. You want to put absolutely no pressure on this. You stick the chip on top, there's a little arm you lift up, put the chip here, you lower the arm, and it will suck that chip into the socket. Zero insertion force, ZIF socket.
How do you know like those pins are aligned?
There's a corner, and we'll show you that when we look at motherboards downstairs next week. There is actually, if I show you, let's see if they show you a picture. If you look at, if you look at this architecture here, you're going to see this corner. Everybody see that diamond there? That is going to tell you where on the process, it will literally only fit one way. Because you can see these pins, there's a couple missing there, there's 6 missing there, but there are 8 missing here, then another set of 3, and there's this notch. Notice there's a notch here and here. There will be a little piece of plastic that fits into those notches. So it only goes in one way. And these pins are very, very fine. On this one, here are the notches. Here is the little golden arrow. And they all have it. Here's the notches. There's the arrow. Arrow, notches. Now, some of the more bizarre ones, this one has 2 notches here and 2 notches here. AMD's definitely look different.
Doesn't AMD actually use like the pins that go into it until it just uses the like their flat connectors that
There depends on the generation. You can't say one is the other. If you pull one example of each out of each of the manufacturers, yes, you could say that. But Intel's done a lot of pins through the years.
Okay.
But yeah, if you look here, these pins, notice they don't have the notches in them, but you still have the golden triangle. This one has 2 notches on this side and 2 on this side. So you can't even mess up the manufacturers, but you can. There's a good close-up of those pins. You bend one of these pins, you are going to be a sad puppy, because the odds of you being able to straighten it out enough to be able to fit back into a ZIF socket are slim to none. Now, sometimes it looks like, well, wait a minute, look at that thing. That little tiny thing in the middle, and the rest of this looks like wasted space. Well, they're changing the architectures. God, that's a battery. But they're changing the architecture constantly with these. Everybody's trying to come up with the newest, latest animal. And you can see even the underside can look different. So looking it up, knowing which which motherboard it goes to, that's why people, oh, I'll buy a computer, no problem. I'll build one, and you get the motherboard. Well, that was only $80, big deal. But yeah, it's got the socket for an $800 processor. So you got to put that into consideration when looking at these. All right. So we plug that in. Next thing you know, we need to put the heat sink. So we go over here to the fans and heat sinks, and you'll notice that there's only one 1366 socket. And what this is referring to, why it's specific, is you see, it's sort of hard to tell here. I can't see it on this, it's so dark.
Are you looking for the fan headers?
Yeah. There's a little hole here, and a little hole here in the 4 corners. It's very hard to see. Those have to line up. And on the back of that motherboard is a plate, a metal plate that's going to help distribute the weight of it trying to pull through that board. And what you got to do is do the screws on the heat sink and fan down on those holes. Just even my liquid cooling, those holes are in different places depending on the socket set. So that's why I could actually with 3D printers I could probably make one, and make my own chassis and everything like that. Ooh, that might be a good project. That's a pretty good thing to think about. All right, so this is easy here. You just come over, you drop it in. Aha. Are we done?
Yeah,
No, it's got a fan. Now, if you do not know where the fan is on the case, where could you go to find out?
The manual.
The manual for the motherboard. Some motherboards, like this one, will say CPU fan. Right there on the, written in English. I have seen a few that are written in Korean. They don't do me a lot of good. But the ones that are in English, I like. So I just take this and I drop it in onto that socket. Now, there will literally there will be within an inch of this processor, somewhere around it, a pin set for that fan. And it will be specifically for the CPU fan. And the reason they specifically put it there is because the fans only have a certain length of wire. They don't want a lot of wire running into that fan and, you know, making a mess of things. Okay? So there are other pin sets. I could have used, on this motherboard, this has a fan pin here and a fan pin here. But these are used for the front case. If I had a long enough wire here, I could probably try to get over the RAM and plug it in there. It would plug in and work fine. But there's a dedicated one for the CPU fan. Use it if it's there, which I've never seen one that doesn't have it. Okay? And that's it. That's literally all you had to do. The hardest part was trying to figure out which one of the processors to use. And all you had to do is go to the manual. It would have been a lot harder trying to figure it out if you didn't have the manual. All right. We got one more here. Processor 2.